Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the place where I mostly talk about games, movies, TV series and anime, usually reviewing them in order to determine whether they are worth the watch or play. As there are literally an overabundance of content present to watch or to play, I'm just trying to be a guide of sorts to help you filter out the content and find the ones which are actually worth your time investment. So, keeping up with the theme of the series, here we have Palworld. First of all, I know I'm pretty late to the party, but this game came like a storm in my life, and like many others, getting me hooked, wrecking up my entire upload schedule. This game, if you are unaware, has been a hot topic in gaming world since past few weeks, as the sales of the game skyrocketed without any expectations, and Palworld becoming the third game in Steam with most number of active players, where at any given moment you can observe more than 1 million concurrent players, which is a pretty big deal, as a game coming out of nowhere to top the charts. So, what exactly is Palworld? As the game is spreading like wildfire, especially in mainstream gaming news, where you might have heard things like the game is a Pokemon ripoff or it's Pokemon with guns. And although there is some sort of truth behind it, but that's just part of a bigger picture. As I personally felt that the game is not as shallow as it's being made out to be, where it does take multiple elements from different games, but it does not come off as a cheap knockoff without any thought put into it. So, after playing 100 plus hours and doing 100% completion, I would like you to join me and let's take a thorough look on why Palworld is going viral and if you should get it. If, strictly speaking gameplay wise, Palworld is a Monster Hunter survival game similar to that of Ark Survival, but placed in a Pokemon type setting. So the game here starts with a very basic character creator, which could really do with some improvement regarding the option it offers. And after the character creation is complete, you are thrown off into the universe of Palworld, with a pouch on your back and a loincloth around your waist, where you basically start the game from Stone Age, and as you progress through the intro tutorial, you will be made familiar with the fundamental of gameplay mechanics, like resource gathering, crafting items and gears, leveling up to unlock new technologies, and finally how to fight and catch Pokemons. Pals. How to fight and catch pals. Using Pal Spheres, a gameplay mechanics that might be a little too on the nose, which certainly didn't help the game make its case on accused derivation. So after explaining the fundamental mechanics, the game just wants you to simply go out adventuring in the world filled with pals. Here the game is majorly divided in two parts. First, where you go out into the wilds exploring the lands, raiding dungeons, hunting and catching different unique pals, and the second part, where the survival elements of the game comes to shine, as it plays like a base building / management simulation. So here, first we're going to talk about the adventure and exploration part of the game, a part which majority of the people are going to come looking for when they decide to pick it up. This is the main reason Palworld became an instant hit, because this game is basically like a wet dream for people who love the setting of Pokemon franchise and the concept it represents, as here you are provided with a satisfying sense of adventure and exploration, hunting monsters the way you always wanted in a Pokemon game but never actually quite got it. This game is an action survival with a vast open world at your disposal, so you go out exploring the lands, finding new and unique pals spread across its different terrains and vistas, where while adventuring you will come across dungeons to explore, treasures to loot, different eggs to incubate, encountering black marketeers to trade items or pals, fighting off syndicate thugs, rescuing pals captured by the poachers, do boss battles against alpha monsters, and even track down legendary beasts. The reason these elements becomes appealing, even being a bit bare bones, is because it has an adorable Pokemon type aesthetics, which is very appealing. But do not let that cute exterior fool you, since it is a survival game where the encounter and battles can be quite challenging at times, and often based on your level can prove deadly, as on multiple occasions I have found myself overconfident taking the fight to a high level boss only to realize how underpowered I am against it, with nothing to do but escape with my life intact. Still, all these elements, just like a Pokemon game, have that core driving motivation of gotta catch 'em all. But unlike Pokemon games, the pals captured here are much more than simple summon monsters, which will be commanded during battles. Instead, they are more like teammates, where you as a player will fight alongside your pals in battles using bows, guns, or grenades. And here you can not only command them, but also use pals as a weapons or accessories to pull off cool offensive or defensive maneuvers, because the combat is not completely monster-centric. Instead, the player and pals must work together as a team to face the challenges, where you can either use your pals as direct weapons like using the Firefox pal as a flamethrower, Ice Penguin pal as a rocket launcher, or even an electric hedgehog as a bomb. And if using pals as a direct weapon is not your thing, then you can even arm your pals with weapons and watch them go nuts guns ablazing into enemy, or even saddle them up to be used as battle mounts. Each pal will be uniquely different with the abilities and utility they offer, and you as a player has the choice to incorporate those abilities into your gameplay the way you like, which greatly helps offering variety in combat and keeping the action fresh. Apart from combat, the pals are also an important part of traversal for world exploration. Even though traversing on foot and gliding across terrains has a fun sense of survival adventure, but given the massive scale of the map, you will be needing pals as mounts. Whether you want to dash across the fields, surf along the ocean, or soar to the skies, they are an essential part of traversal, where using pals as mounts comes very natural and organically. Still, not every pal can be used as mounts. Here, many others can be used as an alternative for your hand gliders, where it all depends upon the physical characteristics of that pal. Here in Traversal, the terrains will also play an important role, as it is a survival game and based on the region, be it fiery pits or frozen tundra. Using the pals who are complementary to that area will prove beneficial while traversing or even during the combat. And though this mechanics might not be as crucial in the latter part of the game, when you have better gears and equipments alongside stronger pals, but still, addition of these elements adds a nice little depth to the gameplay as a whole. Pals are not only an integral part of exploration, but also they are quite essential for resource gathering, which is one of the core elements of any survival game. And here you can utilize your pals to assist you along the task, where they will not only help you gather resources, but the pals themselves are a great source of food and other resources, as alongside mining for ores or chopping of wood, you will also need to harvest pals, because many essential raw materials can only be obtained through them for crafting or building, which brings us to the other half of the game that revolves around survival and base management. If I am being completely honest, this aspect of the gameplay was a total surprise, as I personally wasn't expecting the survival base building mechanics to be this good and engaging, where it takes inspiration from games like Ark Survival on how you evolve through technology progression and adds a little bit of farming sim into the mix to keep you actively engaged in the base building and management. Since the wilds can prove to be quite dangerous, especially in high-level regions, the base is your only safe haven, where you can relax and make preparations before you go out adventuring. This is basically like your home settlement in the game, where you will be depositing all the collected resources, produce raw materials, craft new gears and equipments, do farming and cooking, alongside breeding different pals to obtain new ones. Usually, a lot of these tasks can be dull and boring, but here all of the tedious, time-consuming elements of the base management, including crafting and doing other handiwork, can be outsourced to your pal army, as you can assign a selected number of pals to your base who will be automating most of your monotonous tasks based on their attributes. This element was well thought out and really appreciated, as it took away a lot of boring bits from base management, making it more engaging, as your role here will be to monitor and control the pal workforce. This is where the elements of a farming sim comes into play, as you not only assign the pals to your base based on their specific skills and attributes, but also you manage your workforce to keep them properly fed, help them relax, and treat their injuries or ailments to maintain a strong, happy production force going. And just in case if any pal is stepping out of the line, not being helpful, you can simply butcher and eat it up. When you progress further and better understand the mechanics with a booming base going on, it is quite a vibrant, satisfying sight to behold, which reminded me a lot about an old game called Viva Pinata, which was also a fun farming sim game with vibrant, colorful animals working in your garden. And even though Palworld might not have the most detailed or complex base management or survival mechanics, similar to that of a full-fledged survival games like Forest series, Green Hell, or Ark Survival, but it presents those gameplay elements in a more accessible way with enough thought put into it that justifies its significance and will keep you engaged in it way more than you would have anticipated. Apart from all this, the base also plays an important role of powering up your characters and pals, where only the capture power of the spheres will be upgraded for the players, but you can fully upgrade each pal on their individual stats. Or you can even combine multiple similar pals and their attributes into one pal to buff them up, where you can also teach them new and different attack moveset to give that pal its own uniqueness, adding a bit of a role-playing essence to the game. So, this covered the single-player experience of the game, which on its own is quite compelling, but the main true to the core fun of this game lies in playing multiplayer, where you can team up with your friends in the adventurous journey of exploring, hunting, and catching pals. The gameplay experience becomes much more engaging as your guild, along with their unique pals and playstyles, face challenges together, where combating alpha bosses or legendary beasts alone can be a real challenge, but when facing alongside a team or even an extra player will become a much more enjoyable experience. Even the survival/base building mechanics, which can become a bit monotonous over time when playing solo, is more fun in multiplayer, as you can distribute the base management amongst a guild member, where one can be assigned for collecting resources, one can manage the pals in the base, whilst other can focus on building and crafting. This makes playing the game much more efficient and engaging, as it takes away a lot of tedious time-consuming bits of building and crafting that will help you take your base to the next level quickly, which becomes quite essential when getting raided by the NPCs. Currently, there are two ways you can play multiplayer. First is in a private match supporting up to 4-player co-op, which is optimal for people who simply want to play and enjoy the game without any interference from other players, where you can even alter the world settings based on personal preferences. The second way of multiplayer is playing in official servers, where you can't change the world settings, but each server can support up to 40 players, which in my opinion really makes the game and its world more lively, since the struggle becomes a little too real, as you will have to compete with 39 other players for survival and adventure, where the overall gameplay not only becomes more challenging, but way more chaotic and fun, and also with the promise of upcoming new elements like PvP, arena matches, raid bosses, and crossplay, which in my opinion makes multiplayer the definitive way to play this game. Despite being great fun, I would not say the mechanics here are the most original or strongest. In fact, if looked at individually, the survival exploration and base building mechanics are going to feel a little weak on their own. But when all put together in its given premise, the game becomes a little too compelling and engaging, at least more than you would have expected. Still, the game is far from perfect, which brings us to the shortcomings with Palworld. But before beginning, I would like to remind everyone that this is an early access game and not a full release. A lot of additions and changes are bound to happen, so I will be talking about the game in its current state and what would be the improvements and changes I would like to see in its full release. So, starting off with the basics here, bugs and glitches. Even though for a major part it runs pretty decent for an early access game, still the bugs and glitches are there, both in mechanics and visuals, like objects or pals get stuck in infrastructures, sometimes function key is not responding properly, pals attacking wrong targets or doing wrong tasks when summoned, and also performance is quite inconsistent, where FPS drops or stuttering can be expected from time to time. Though these bugs alongside others are not a game-breaking element, they just prove to be a mild inconvenience. Nothing which can't be sorted by reloading the game. Nonetheless, devs are acknowledging these bugs and already multiple patches have been released addressing some major issues, with the promise of more fixes coming along the way. Now, moving aside from bugs and performance, I want to talk a bit more about the setting and world of the game, where even though possessing a massive map to explore, a lot of it feels barren and empty. Obviously, there are pals roaming about their natural habitat and other human NPC fighting or capturing them in their own struggle. Still, the world feels like it is lacking some liveliness and depth, where Palpago's islands needs to be more populated, not only with pals but also with humans and their settlements, adding more to their role in the setting. The game, in my opinion, can also build some character with the addition of a coherent lore and a world which represents that. It's not like there is no lore present. While exploring, you can obviously observe areas which clearly depicts that the world must have an interesting history. But the only way you can understand the world better is by collecting and reading the codex logs present throughout, which according to me were a little vague, whereas it needs something more substantial in its presentation of history to impact the players better. The game has a pretty large world with many diverse regions, which right now feels pretty bare bones and a bit lifeless. But if utilized properly by adding more substance and depth, it could prove to be one of the most fun playground in a survival game without a doubt. Even though there are bugs present and the world feels a bit empty or lifeless, but you will only register these facts very rarely when you take some time to observe and understand the world better, because a majority of the time you will barely be bothered by these facts, as most of the time you will be so engaged in the game that these issues will hardly be noticeable. This reminded me of a conversation I had with my friend whilst playing co-op that normally we as a player will be nitpicking so many issues or flaws with many AAA titles. But here, where there are obvious drawbacks and issues present, we were barely bothered by it. This is a statement on itself, where if the game is genuinely fun and engaging, the flaws will simply fade out in the background. This obviously doesn't mean that those flaws will be forced onto you forever, as this is an early access game with a very small development team working behind the curtains. Still, a roadmap of early access has been provided with its newfound success, where the game will continue its development, fixing up those bugs and glitches alongside adding new elements to the game, which includes but is not limited to PvP, arena matches, raid bosses, migration of servers, improvements to gameplay mechanics, and obviously adding new pals, regions, and technologies. That really makes me look forward for the game's future. Palworld is an action survival game that definitely without a doubt takes a lot of elements from different franchises, where apart from obvious similarities with Pokemon, the game also has a survival mechanics similar to that of Ark Survival, player and environment aesthetics similar to that of Fortnite, alongside some gameplay elements from new Zelda games. But instead of coming forth as a cheap clone, Palworld manages to be its own thing. And it's not like the before mentioned franchises were original pioneers. Even they took inspirations from source materials that came before them. And I would like to say this to all the people hating on Palworld. Yes, their adaptations might be a little too direct and visible, but taking a positive inspiration from a game and applying to another in its own way is nothing new. This is how gaming has evolved over years. Every single gaming mechanics or functionality has gone through years of trial and error across many games to be what it is today. So stop being so petulant about it. And also, the reason this game is selling like hotcakes is because it is providing players with a satisfying gameplay experience in a setting they never got. And I will give you two reasons why Palworld is doing so much better than any recent Pokemon titles. Now, the reason number one is obviously accessibility. Pokemon games are limited only to Nintendo platforms, and a major demographic of gamers who play in consoles or PC are unable to experience it. The second and probably the most important reason is that Pokemon is just not mature enough for a lot of players. Nintendo has to acknowledge that a lot of hardcore Pokemon fans comes either from older Pokemon games or anime, and in both situations it is very highly likely that the majority of those fans of the franchise like me are mature adults now. And keeping aside Pokemon Go, which was the last Pokemon game that genuinely got me excited, Nintendo is still trying to cater towards a kids demographic game, and it is just not mature and open-ended enough for adult players. This is the reason why Palworld is such a huge success. It is offering just the right thing with just enough maturity to make it work. And since it is available for Xbox platforms and Steam, the game is able to provide accessibility to a huge demographic of people who were unable to experience an open world Pokemon type game. And it might be a hot take, but it is my personal opinion that this is a better Pokemon experience than any recent Pokemon games. Yes, the game possesses many flaws and shortcomings in its current state, as I have already mentioned before, but without a doubt it is also that much engaging and will make you not care about its drawbacks. And I'll mention again, the game is still in early access. Palworld is not even a complete game as of now, and it's still this compelling, which really makes me hopeful for the future of the game with excitement to watch it grow and evolve. So ultimately, I will say this, if you're a fan of Pokemon franchise and would not mind the game's early access state, then you should definitely get it, especially right now when it's available for a very reasonable price, which is definitely bound to go up on its full release. So folks, that's it from my side today. Thank you for watching the video. If you are already playing the game, please do let me know your experience on the comment section. Like to support the channel and subscribe for more incoming videos. And I'll see you soon in the next one.